What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. In this episode, I am joined once again by Dion Arlyn. We break down both the Portland Open and the Beaver State Fling from his perspective, since he was able to compete in both of those events in the Open division. I also spectated both of those events. It was kind of the unofficial Portland Swing. It was the first ever Portland Open. The Beaver State Fling is hands down my favorite event that takes place every year on the national tour. And yeah, even though we don't really do tournament recaps or anything like that on this particular podcast, with so many other podcasts doing that, I still think it was only fair to touch on some of our thoughts about the events overall. We also kind of geek out on Milo. So if you're sick of hearing about Milo and the Beaver State Fling, this is not the episode for you. If you want to have some kind of local perspective on the event itself, what it was like to play in it, what it was like to spectate it, and some of the ins and outs of one of the best courses in the country, stay tuned for another conversation with Dion Arlyn. Couple other things. First of all, I'm very sorry that it's been quite a while since I posted an episode. It was not planned, it just kind of how things worked out, especially with the Portland Open, with Beaver State. A lot of the people in the disc golf community were kind of busy. I played a tournament and the weekend in between those as well, personally, so I just didn't have a lot of time to kind of rope somebody in, but I'm going to try to get back on schedule as soon as possible. I have a couple other people that I'm looking to bring in to interview for the show, and we will definitely keep the ball rolling. Huge shout out to the people that have supported me on Patreon. I believe I'm up to 6 patrons now after a month or so of having it live, and through their contributions, I'm already inching very close to being able to get this podcast onto some podcasting apps and all of the kind of traditional ways to enjoy it and listen to it without having to be attached to the actual YouTube platform. Hopefully soon you'll be able to subscribe to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast on your favorite podcasting app and go from there and be able to download it to your phone, whatever device you want, and listen to it there. I'm definitely looking forward to doing more interviews with some other folks that I've been in touch with, so stay tuned for that. No Andy on this particular episode. We got too late of a start to bring him in, so I will catch up with Andy coming up here very soon. Stay tuned to the channel. Lots more content coming. It is summer, and there's going to be plenty of time to record some fun videos and some more reviews, of course, and all that kind of good stuff. Thank you so much for your support. Without further ado, let's get into the interview with Dion Arlyn. All right, guys, we have Dion with us once again. Dion, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, nerd.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So the Portland Swing is now in the books. I spectated both events. You played in both events. Andy's not with us tonight, but he actually caddied for some of the rounds, or I think most of the rounds at Portland Open, and then he was out watching the final round of Beaver State with us as well. Anything stand out to you just like overall? I just really liked having the pros in town for so long. I was able to play a Sake Bomb Challenge in between there because Ricky was still in town. And it was just kind of cool seeing like all the pros on social media taking in the kind of Portland life. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was super exciting to be a part of. I feel super fortunate to be able to play in either of those events, let alone both of them. Had kind of a busy couple of weeks for myself. And, I've got 2 kids and, doing the family thing, and I work full time. And so just being able to get the time to play those events was pretty special for me.
Yeah, and they're substantial events. It's not like you're talking about a 1 day or just a 2-day weekend kind of a thing. Like, it's quite a commitment, especially with Beaver State being only 3 days, but being 4 full rounds. I know a lot of people have touched on that topic alone, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you kind of like the old school vibe of doing the whole property in 1 day, or do you think that that's kind of outdated?
Yeah, I have some general thoughts about the Fling. We might as well just start there and address that specific question kind of in the context of my general feedback, which is the Beaver State Fling 10 years ago was one of the most, forward-thinking, well-ran, organized, catering to the pros, catering to the fans, events I think you'll ever find. And I think kind of the thing that hit me this past weekend or at the Fling was it hasn't changed in 7-8 years. It's virtually the exact same tournament.
Yeah.
And it's still a great tournament, and it's, still an awesome experience and something I would love to be a part of every year. But it kind of feels dated now, and it's kind of just reinforces the idiom that if you're not progressing, you're stagnating. And all the other events have taken their cues and learned from what's going on in the world and stretched out to a 3-day or a 4-day event, 1 round a day. Fling is kind of the last holdout on that, and it was very noticeable. So I'm officially saying I'm not a fan of the 2 rounds in 1 day.
Okay.
I think that this tournament is so awesome to play. It deserves being a 4-day event with 1 a day.
How many different, like, how many strokes do you think that really would change if they were to do that? Do you think it's taking a toll on the scoring overall, or is it more just like kind of putting more unnecessary wear and tear on the athletes? Because I know for me, even just playing Milo all 27 in a day, in the normal kind of year-round layout, is pretty substantial, you know, especially all from all the longs like that. So to do the whole Beaver State property, 2 18s like that, we're not like we're talking about short courses. Do you think it's more of like a safety kind of overall issue like that, or is it that it kind of just harms the fun of the event as well?
If I had to kind of pick anything, I would say if you want the top players competing at their best, you separate those first 2 rounds. That's half the event on 1 day, and that kind of unfairly weighs those 2 rounds against the rest of the event. So I had a bad first round, for example, and would have had to shoot 54 every single round just to cash, like literally to be last cash. I would have had to go 7-7-7 after my bad first round.
Wow.
And you know, there's a lot of factors that go into my bad first round, but some of the ones that I feel, you know, could be pretty easily addressed is having to drive down that morning. You know, I got up at 3:30 after going to bed at 1. You know, I'll give you the backstory on that, but got up at 3:30, drove the 3 hours down there, you know, got very little warm up and got onto the course, and I missed, you know, 6 really short putts just because I wasn't awake, I wasn't loose, I wasn't focused. And all of those things are my responsibility to be, you know, during a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was 1 round a day, you know, I could have slept in, get down there at, you know, 10, get warmed up, you know, do all the things that you need to do, and I would have been at my best. And assuming that everybody would have been at their best, then you get 4 rounds of everybody's best, which I think, you know, what the fans want to see, and is going to produce the best, most competitive golf all around.
Yeah. And it also kind of ends up being like that first round, for like the media's sake and for the spectators and stuff, is almost kind of like a throwaway round. It's like it barely even really counts. You know, it seems like nobody really even cares so much about what happened that first round, and you can almost just move straight on to the second round of that first day, and then the other rounds after that. You know, because a lot of the media teams just kind of can't quite do it in the crazy turnarounds that they're supposed to be operating under, and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, it does seem to create some issues. Do you have any idea why they continue to utilize that format? Is it just to stick with tradition? Is it an issue with like renting Milo for any longer than they are able to? Do you have any background on that?
I'm not aware of any logistical hindrances to stretching it out to 4 days. As far as I know, the state parks loves disc golf. I mean, we bring in, you know, a tremendous amount of visitors every year to that property. So I think the relationship is good. You know, everybody's out there practicing and playing on the day before anyway, so it's not like reserving the course for 1 more day is that much of a strain on the part.
Right. And the baskets are already into the full layout for several days before the event as well, to allow for practice and for the random doubles and all the other stuff that goes on. So yeah, that's true. There probably isn't so much a logistical issue then, as much as they just maybe want to just kind of stick with what they've always done, which is getting back to your original point, is, you know, does this event kind of need to be rethought a little bit? Another big topic that everybody's been talking about is the inclusion of the amateur fields and stuff at the same exact time on the same property. Do you feel as though the days are numbered for that concept as well?
So they did split them out a few years ago, and they only tried it once. I do think it's time to split it out again. Stumptown's kind of claim that I've heard over the years, or the reason why they haven't done it, is the preservation of the volunteer group that they have. They have a great group of volunteers, a lot of repeat volunteers, and asking them to do 2 weekends or coordinating 2 weekends worth of course coverage is a lot to ask, and I think that that's a very smart decision that they are considering. The manpower that they have at their disposal for a weekend like this.
Right. That's fair.
And especially if you see Portland Open being a consistent event where these are only 2 weekends apart, or potentially back-to-back weekends in future years, then you're really taxing the volunteer base of Portland. If you split out the AM weekend and had it over 3 weekends, so that could be a challenge. But This event kind of deserves it. Like if this event went away from an amateur side, or the amateur side, if you think about the way Glass Blown Open does it, there's so many courses in Emporia that they've got like 9 different tournaments going on.
Right. They do all the flex start C tiers and all that stuff and all the different divisions. And they have so much room to put everybody. But that's the other thing. Like there's other, like obviously the AMs could play at Timber. Timber is a very popular, basically right across the river from Milo. You can see each course from each other. And obviously you could potentially move the AMs over to Timber. But part of the reason why people want to play the event is because of Milo. That's what they're there for. So I don't think we're going to see the same numbers for an amateur Beaver State if they're not at Milo.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I think you could totally rework the 4-day layout, and if you do a 4-day layout for the pros, you could go to a 3-day layout for the AMs. And I think that still allows the exact same amount of time to fit the same amount of rounds that are happening today. It just stretches it out 1 more day on the volunteer level. But, I think it's possible. And I think they should move in that direction and consider that as an option.
I mean, they could also do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be right at the same time. You could potentially have 2 separate events. You have the national tour side of things. And then you have, the whatever. Is it considered an A tier for the rest of the fields?
That's correct.
So they could potentially have an A tier later on in the summer or at a different time completely and have that amateur experience. Another thing, just for anybody listening to this who wants to play the Beaver State layout and have an opportunity to do so without having to worry about the lottery and all that stuff, they are having a next-gen event out there, a premier next-gen event on the Beaver State layout at Milo. So you guys can check that out at nextgendiscgolf.com. You can see the scheduling there. I'm hoping to go out there and check that out. That should be pretty fun. There should be a lot of good players out there for that too.
So that kind of leads me into my first big point that I wanted to talk about tonight with you, which is the field strength and the flexibility that moving to a 4-day format provides and the benefits to that.
Okay.
We had 80 pros. Anton was not able to make it out, so we had 79 pros playing. 58 of them were 1,000 rated or higher, and the average rating for the entire field was 1,008. So, basically the hardest tournament ever.
Right. Yeah. That's crazy.
75% of the field is 1,000 rated, so that's insane.
Yeah, that is.
And to cash, you have to shoot. I think it was. I've got it all up in front of me here. Last cash averaged 10-17. So you had to shoot 10-17 to get $65 over 3 grueling days of golf. Wow. To me, that just doesn't make sense. That's 31st place at a national tour, and that I have a very hard time reconciling that. So I think if you go to a 4-day layout, you make it a pro only, and you open the field up to its maximum capacity, 400-person pro field. I don't know if 400 is actually realistic, but, whatever is realistic.
Yeah.
You guaranteed to fill it. Nobody's not going to have, balk at an opportunity to play in open and just be a donator for that weekend. So I would like to see that expand so that, maybe 80 guys get paid instead of 30 guys. And then that last cash minimum might be, $400 or $500. And I think that makes the whole event a little bit more fruitful for all the dudes coming.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, that's an incredible thing to overcome, to try to do so well, and then think about Eagle going back to back champion of the event. It's pretty impressive stuff, man. Pretty incredible.
Oh yeah, that dude's a beast.
So we saw you out at Portland Open as well. So the Portland Swing consisted of the Portland Open, which was the first time this event had ever taken place. Really, the first time since a large scale event had happened at Blue Lake on that property since the 2014 Worlds, which was an amazing experience. You know, the epic playoff battle between Paul and Rick, and Paul never being in the lead at any point throughout the event. Maybe he held the lead at some point, like during one of the rounds, but as far as I know, at no point, like after the round, was he ever holding that first spot until he tied it up in the final 9, and then went to eight hole playoff, culminating on the par 5 there when Ricky hit the tree. Just unbelievable stuff. I was there in person for that. Were you there for that?
I played in that World, but
Right.
I was driving home at that point.
Okay.
So I had my wife, the dog, with me, and then we found out that was not a dog park, so she stayed with the dog the whole time. And then by the time I got off the course, I was like, "Yeah, we gotta go."
Yeah.
So I couldn't, but I ended up driving home to Corvallis and watching the last 20 minutes of it on Disc Golf Planet, I think it was, or Disc Golf TV, Smashbox, one of those.
I think that might have been like one of the. I think that was Smashbox, wasn't it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure who was broadcasting for that, because
it was filming it, but I think it was on Disc Golf Planet or something.
I think so too.
It might not been.
I believe didn't Crazy John interview them both after the playoff was over, like right there? I think that's how it went down.
Yeah, Ricky was like literally just missed the putt, got beat in this huge playoff, and he handled it like a freaking champ too.
Yeah,
answering Crazy John's crazy questions.
Yeah, that was crazy. So he hit the tree, and I was pulling for Rick the whole time, because everybody knows I'm a big Rick fan, and I was pulling for him. This is when I really became a fan of his, and he's playing so well and just doing everything right, and then just to lose by one stick like that essentially is just must be so hard to reconcile. And I remember that Paul hit that putt, and I turned and just walked away. I was so dejected that it was over, and that Rick had lost. I left. I went back to Tournament Central. I grabbed my wife. We left, and as we were driving out, Ricky was walking by himself down the fairway of 1. Nobody around. Everybody was like either back at Tournament Central, or a lot of people were still standing over by where it all took place, like kind of just milling around without not really knowing what to do at that point. And I remember seeing him walk down the fairway there, and like I almost wanted to go say something to him, but I didn't want to intrude in the moment or anything like that. And I remember that really strong. I was just like, let's get out of here. I was really frustrated that it went down the way it did. So what was it like being back on the property? I feel like that whole facility is just really ideally suited for hosting an event. Like there's so much parking, there's a ton of room to warm up, there's a ton of room to have practice baskets and vending and all the different things. It just seems like it's such a great facility to host that sort of thing. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think that was a great venue and facility. All of those things, for what you said, are spot on, and honestly contributed to how smooth the event ran, just the overall enjoyment for me. Getting to play good was a cherry on top, but just overall it was just very smooth, fairly low frills event. So it's really interesting to compare and contrast that to Milo, which is, some destination. It's definitely a destination kind of tournament, but then it lacks all of those things that you just described. So it's a weird juxtaposition, because I honestly preferred the Portland Open experience over the Beaver State experience. There's pros and cons on both sides, but I think that the Portland Open event is a little bit more streamlined and kind of what maybe the touring guys are hoping for or expecting.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Just
Okay.
from a spectator standpoint alone, when you like, I know from experience that I got to get to Milo really early to have any chance of parking anywhere near Tournament Central, and really that's kind of almost out of play at this point. And then we got there several hours before the lead card teed off, and we still had to park basically all the way in that far lot, way well away from everything, and then walk all the way back through. And actually a bunch of different people are trying to play through those different areas you need to walk through to get back to Tournament Central, so that's not exactly ideal.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, at Portland Open, we drove up, parked, less than a couple 100 feet away from Tournament Central, and from Tournament Central you walk across and hole one is right there, and you're off to the races. So it worked out really smooth like that. Like, we got over to the pavilion, and there was all the vendors and everything set up, and like Philo was underneath on the concrete, kind of like a makeshift tee pad, just throwing out into the open field to warm up before his round. And just seemed like there was plenty of room to kind of find your own space or do what you have to do. It's interesting too, because I had spoke to my friend James, who's been out on the road for the first time, and he was telling me about the experience at San Francisco Open and how it's like the complete opposite. Like, they have a net in like a parking space for the whole field. Like, they didn't, I don't even think they had like baskets or anything, nowhere to throw a disc. Like, you got to go out and throw these giant, 1,000-foot holes, and you have no warm up whatsoever other than throwing your discs into a net and then having them bounce off of concrete, And he's like, then we get back to Portland and there's all this parking and tons of fields and clean bathrooms everywhere. And it's just like everything's perfectly set up. Yeah, it seemed like they really had it dialed in. You think that's mostly a kind of the Disc Golf Pro Tour bringing their experience running these events to that, or it seemed like it was really smooth, especially considering a first time event.
Yeah, I would say that's what it is. They considered those things, and again, it just made it very apparent that compared to the Beaver State Fling, you don't have a place to warm up, you don't have a net to throw into. I would have loved to get some full power rips in before any of my rounds, and really didn't even have the opportunity to do that besides round one at 7:30 in the morning in a wet, dewy Milo West. So
right,
it. The Pro Tour does a great job. Jeff Spring, Dustin, and Zoe, they did a great job running Portland Open. The amenities and facilities were fantastic. The only things that kind of lacked was there wasn't a lot of time with other players hanging out. So the Fling does a great job bringing people together and facilitating a way for people to kind of spend time together and catch up. So I liked that about the Fling, but I liked how smooth and easy it was to get in and out of Portland Open and then go just hang out in Portland and catch up with friends that way.
Yeah, it did seem like it was more of Portland Open is so close to everything as well, being closer to, the hotels and to Southeast Portland and downtown Portland and whatever else, that it was easier to just kind of cruise out of there and go do other things in town rather than Milo. It always has that vibe where everybody's hanging out, and I ran into you after the final round, and there's a huge gallery. Also, that's another aspect of it, is having all the AMs there, and just the amount of people that are on the property at any given time. The gallery was enormous for the final round, and that was really cool and exciting. It helps with the atmosphere. And Seppo had probably the grossest up and down par save I've seen personally. I was just insane on 17, and when that putt come flying out of the bushes and went in, everybody just lost their minds. And I was confused though. Here's a weird thing that I wanted to touch on: the scoreboard was not was not correct leading into that hole, or they changed it at a weird time or something. I don't know, because I was looking at the scoreboard because of the lack of service. I didn't have the opportunity to look at UDisc, and my phone wasn't really working. I was looking at the scoreboard, and when he hits that and then Eagle misses his par putt, I thought they were tied. I was like, oh, they're tied going into the last hole based on the way the scoreboard was reading. And maybe it was me. Maybe I just had it messed up in my head, but I was totally confused. And then when Seppo missed the putt and then Eagle tapped in, I couldn't really see anything because the gallery was so big. Also, multiple occasions by the time we get to the final hole, for some reason, of all people, Jeremy Colling is standing right in front of me. Who's not a small man, and like I'm like, why is it you? I love you, but like, why are you the one standing in front of me? Out of nowhere, after 18 holes of golf, here you are with your bag on still, and you're like in front of me. It's just, it's so funny. But that's happened to me on multiple occasions. Yeah. So then Eagle taps in. They announce him as the champion. I was like, oh, I guess they weren't. I guess Eagle still had a stroke. So I was a little bit disappointed because I thought we were headed for another Milo showdown, going to extra holes.
Yeah. How sweet would that have been?
Yeah, would have been great. And I don't, as much as I don't really want to go into the tournament recap stuff, I've said it on the show before. I'm not going to do that. Like everybody does the tournament recap and whatever else. But with you playing in the event and me always being out there and it being one of my favorite events, I think it's fair to talk about it a little bit since I was there. We were both there in person. So I was really blown away that Eagle went with that weird kind of jump putt upshot. That was kind of strange to me. I don't know why he didn't just throw a little soft backhand right to the basket. He's so good at that, to lay it up and just take the whole pressure out of the situation. Then he misses that par putt. But it's interesting because we kind of expected Eagle just to run away with the thing, and ended up being arguably the tightest battle we've seen at a big event all year.
Yeah, I watched that on the replay, and I said, what the heck kind of terrible upshot is that? That was so weird.
It was a goofy upshot. Yeah. I feel like I would get that up and down 9 times out of 10. It was such an easy shot. And obviously there's a lot of pressure there and everything's fine, but I mean, that's just an overstable putter, soft hyzer to the bucket every time. I don't know what he was doing with the weird. He even said it on interview, like, I don't know why I did a jump putt. It was just very strange.
Yeah, well, it worked out for him, and a lot of people were questioning his choice of strategy on, playing conservative in the last few holes versus putting the pedal to the metal. But I think he had the right strategy. I think the only weird decision he made was that particular shot. So,
oh yeah, well,
that's a weird fluke, but everything else he did was great.
Absolutely. From my perspective, we're standing over there, and I see the discs come in. I see Seppo's blue disc go up high and kick left, like all the way to the top of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Top of that shelf. And I'm like, this thing is over. Like, that's game over. He's taking a 4 at best here. From there. I mean, just a horrendous place to be. And then I see the Huck Lab forehand come in, and I'm like, that's Eagle, and he's going to just throw this under the bucket, and this thing is so over. And felt kind of deflated. And then Seppo throws his shot and like gets almost out, like the second shot was not like anything to be to be ashamed of either. It was a strong second shot to get him anywhere near a chance to get out and run that putt, and then he just had the perfect window. And yeah, it just looked like magic, like just a putter just emerged from the forest and just flies into the basket, and the place went crazy. And then Eagle has to get up and down from there. It was really, really epic stuff, man. And I feel like that is always the way out there. It's so rare that somebody is comfortable going into the final few holes. And had Eagle easily could have made gotten a look at a 2 on 17, but he also, going for that, could have easily kicked left into the trees and taken a 5. That's a very dangerous hole. So that bailout forehand was money all the way. He just fluffed the upshot, which can always happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't want to push. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I think good strategy, good play. This speaks to the quality of the courses that it's so close out there. Both Portland Open and the Fling, nearly ending in playoffs. And having playoffs happen so regularly out there. It's just because the courses are so fair. So that's always exciting.
Definitely, they're fair. They're dangerous. It's not like you can just stroll it in. Like you have a lead at the Memorial and you just throw a bunch of hyzers and kind of walk it in with a bunch more birdies. Like, you got to be on top of every single shot. With Blue Lake, the OB is so prevalent, and it's just horrendous. If you get off the fairway there, you just start scrambling so quickly, you might lose your disc. You probably lose your disc and all that kind of stuff. So I don't I don't want to like throw you under the bus or like put you on the spot with this. We kind of talked about the first round of Milo, but it's kind of interesting. You took 12th place at Portland Open, feeling pretty
Yep.
strong, way up in there, and then really didn't kind of carry that momentum into the Beaver State Fling. Another person we saw fail to cash at the Beaver State Fling was the Portland Open champion Drew Gibson. Right? Drew fail was out of the cash, I believe, at Milo. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, well, mine is really obvious. So I'll give you kind of a breakdown of my 3 weeks in that time span. So I work full time. I'm a systems analyst or digital systems analyst, basically a business analyst for my credit union here in Tacoma. And I've got a few projects that I've been working on, and I had 2 of them go live this past month. So I had quite a bit on my plate, but I also had these disc golf events and a work conference to Vegas in the middle and between the Portland Open and the Fling. So for the Portland Open, I worked some long days leading up to taking that weekend off. I took Thursday off, went down and practiced with Nate and Colin. Got my throws in, got my rest. Didn't have to tee off until I think noon the next day. So I played great Portland Open, 1, 2, 3, 4 days. Go back up to work on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, squeeze in 4 long days. Try to catch up for that short week. Leave for Vegas on Saturday. I'm there Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so 5 days. I come back Wednesday night, squeeze 1 day of work in. On Thursday, work a 12-hour day. Basically worked till about 11 o'clock at night. Got the kids, home, everything in bed. Was up till about 1:30. Turned around at 3:30 and drove down and played my 2 rounds on Friday. So,
yeah,
kind of an insane run.
Yeah, that was not a recipe for success.
Yeah, no wonder I shot a 65.
I think
and
Eagles,
looking at Drew,
I think Eagles' schedule was slightly different than that.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's the difference between having rest, having tee times, having just the mental pressure of only 1 round, and
Sure.
just basically couldn't get anything going. My body felt clunky. My focus was there. Wasn't there. My energy was low. And after 1 round, I virtually had no hopes of cashing. Drew similarly shot a 60 and a 59. So to cash at that point, he's got to go super hot, and I'm sure he's over it at that point. Coming off the win. So
right.
Yeah. So for me, it was just the insane amount of travel and work and lack of sleep and all of that. It's not a good way to play the Fling.
No. But another thing that's interesting about this event, and we spoke about how difficult the field is and how high quality the field really is, but there's also every year we see very, very good players fail to cash and really have some of their worst performances out of the year. Now, I play Milo, and I'll play from the longs usually. Maybe I'll do a mix depending on who I'm playing with and that sort of thing. I never really considered it to be that difficult of a course. Maybe I'm crazy in that, or maybe I just have vastly different expectations of it. But how do you rank it in terms of the actual difficulty of playing those Beaver State layout?
It's not difficult. It's not the layout that's difficult. It's the competition that's difficult. At Oregon Open, we played the normal 27 at Milo, and I had a scoring error. I think we talked about last time.
Yeah, we touched on that.
But I shot Ironman for 54 holes at Milo. So let's extrapolate that to Ironman at the Beaver State Fling, and that would have put me tied for 4th with James Conrad. Okay. So
yeah,
it's not the difficulty. It's the competition and the setting, and I do think the 2 rounds on the first day has an impact. The lack of warm up, the lack of kind of just general, tournament flow. It's just a very different beast. And and I think throwing people off their rhythm, as well as just making people know that they have to execute perfectly and the pressure's on, just sometimes causes people to play terrible.
Right. So when I ran into you at Tournament Central post round, you had mentioned that you were just kind of having fun and ace running everything and kind of playing the aggressive style you wouldn't let yourself play if you were still kind of closer to contention. Any fun stories about that? Any ace runs or any like big shots that you put down?
Yeah, so that last round was pretty rad. I shot a 71, which was 898 rated. worst round I've played in probably a decade, but it was the most fun round I ever played. So,
wow.
A nickname or coined a new term out there called Rage Roller.
Okay.
And basically, you have a bad hole, and so you purposely go on tilt the next hole, and you throw a roller as hard as you can, and so that's your Rage Roller.
Okay.
And so I threw about a dozen of those in that final round. Every upshot I was throwing my Zeppelin, trying to just put it in, going 30, 40 long and missing the comeback putt.
Okay.
So
I like it.
I didn't have any super exciting shots. I had one or two drives that got some pretty good distance and a couple of approaches that I almost threw in, but nothing all that great. And on the final hole was hole 10 for me. I went 360 off the tee, put it a little wide, and I said, okay, I'm going to re-tee, put a little wide, said, screw it, I'm going to re-tee, I'm going to go for the island.
Were you going for the island initially?
Yeah, I was going for the island
every time. Okay.
I island all attempts, and put it about 20 feet wide of the island, pin high. It's like, come on, and then I threw one to the left pin, and then from there I laid up, and it nicked off the bottom of one of the trees and bounced OB, and I took a 10, and it was like, okay, whatever. Like, wow. So had I just forward that hole, my score would have been more, mortal. It would have been, let's see, 6 strokes better. Would have been a 65, which would have rated around, 950, which is what my first round was. So,
okay,
it would have been less embarrassing, but it was kind of meaningless at that point. I just got to have.
If I remember correctly, you successfully threw a 360 to the island on that hole in the bag video that Central Coast filmed for you a few years ago, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
yeah.
So if anybody wants to see that, which is disgusting, but
yeah,
I think I have a comment on that video that's a few years old. That's just like, I don't know if you guys understand how gross that shot is to the island, but it's really frustrating to me to watch. I didn't really see anybody run the island. I saw some shots get extremely close. Calvin Heimberg didn't really run the island, but he put his shot so far down on the left-hand side there that he was able to run it. I think he tried to give it a little half a go and scooted out the back and ended up costing him. But Conrad got a spot on the island, but from where we weren't really too sure he crossed. I'm not sure he crossed onto the island at all. I think he might have got a generous spot on that one. It's hard to say. Yeah,
that's generous, and that's fine. That's how the game is right now, until there's actual, marshals or spotters with the viewed authority to make the call based on vantage point. Whatever. It is what it is. It's fine. Good breaks come, good breaks go. So that's okay. I think Drew Gibson and Garrett Girthy got it in that final round where they were just going for everything.
Nice. That would be fun to watch, those guys on tilt. I mean, yourself included. I would have liked to caddy for you on that last round and just see you when you're just kind of throwing it to the wind and just going for it. It must be pretty fun.
Yeah, Garrett went 2-2 on Genius in hole 10 to finish his round.
Okay.
Well, he was up in the cash, so that would have been in the middle of his round. He went 2-2.
That's awesome. I've seen Paul do that before. I believe the first year I went out there to watch the Beaver State Fling. I mean, at this point in my disc golf playing, like, I didn't even know people threw that. Like, I had no perception of how far golf discs were even capable of flying at that time. So I was just shocked to begin with. And then Paul got the 2 on 10 there. And I'm not sure if he got the Genius hole that year or not, but he definitely got the 2 on 10. I remember that distinctly on route to winning the event. And then fast forward a couple years later, I was standing over by there because that's usually a spot that I'll hold up on there for a little while and watch a few different groups kind of come through, and then catch back up with the lead card once they come there, and then kind of follow. And Paul gets the 2 on the genius hole. Everybody else is kind of putting out. He walks over, puts his bag down on 10, and it's just me and him standing there. And I'm like, "What's up, Paul?" He's like, "Hey, man." I'm like, "I gotta tell you, I remember the first time I was ever out here. You got the 2 on this one right here, and you ended up winning that year. And I never forgot. I always, when I come out there and play with like casual people, and I'll be like, you guys know that like when the big event happens out here, people can throw to that parking lot island right there, and they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about?" I was like, I always told people about that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. That was cool." And then he did it again, 2-2 that round, and I think that was the year he went on to beat Schustrick in the playoff from the second card. If memory serves, but yeah, it was a pretty cool moment. I'm like, this guy is unbelievable. Well, it's always a blast to get out there and watch it from my perspective. I don't really have the pro insight on the way everything shapes out with the different rounds, but you said that you wanted to touch on some of the par out at Milo. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I got a little game for you. All right, I'm gonna describe to you 3 holes.
Okay.
And your job is to tell me which one is the par 4. Okay. So this is a game called Guess the Par 4, and it features 3 holes from Milo.
Okay.
Hole number A. Okay.
Okay.
Averaged on the weekend 3.265 and had 7 2s. Okay. Hole A.
Okay.
Hole B for the weekend averaged 3.3 and had 1 2. Okay.
Okay.
And hole C averaged 3.29 and had 11 2s. All right. So you tell me, A, B, or C, which one is the par 4?
I'm gonna based on the nature of the game, I'm gonna guess C, and I'm gonna say that was the genius hole.
All right, that was a good guess. That was not correct.
Okay.
But you guessed the theme. So hole A is the genius.
Okay.
Averaging minus 0.74 under par for the weekend.
Wow.
So as a par 4, minus 0.735. Okay. As a par 3 would have averaged 0.265 over. Easier then. Do you want to guess what the other 2 holes are as par 3s?
So the other 2 were par 3s. Okay.
Yep. And they overall, by stroke count, averaged harder than the genius.
Let's see. 17 comes to mind.
Well, that's a great guess. That is not it.
18 on West. Is that one of them?
Also a good guess. It's not correct.
Oh, man. Killing me now. I don't know a lot of the hole numbers for some of the other ones too, since I'm so used to the regular layout out there. So I'm not really sure. I think I'm drawing blanks here.
No problem. I'll help you out.
Okay.
I'll help you out. Hole 8 West, so the island hole on the west side, the little tiny island hole. It's basically a 2-shot par 3.
Absolutely. That was the one I was thinking of, but I don't know the number on that one. Okay, great.
Gotcha. Only had 1 2 the entire weekend and averaged 3.3, so a harder hole than the genius and less 2s on it, even though the genius is a par 4.
Right.
And then hole 11 West, which is the tight one way back in the corner before you turn around and come back. So little shoot out of the gap, goes left and then into the woods.
Oh, yeah. That's a bruiser.
Yeah, that averaged 3.29 and had 11 2s.
Okay.
So more 2s there, but still harder than the genius because it's much more punishing.
That is a lot. That's a lot of people who got that one. That's for people who haven't played that hole. That's a savage one to imagine getting to for me. I mean, I'm happy to get out of the gap and not into the left-hand side somewhere. That's usually what I honestly kind of just end up bailing out into kind of the little strip of tall grass in between the 2 holes on that one.
Yeah. and then you lay up and you take a three, and that's what basically everyone else in the pro field did, except for like a dozen guys.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah, I pretty much. I think Eagle was even doing that. I think Eagle was going like mid range, kind of soft turnover, and then just throwing in, just playing that one for three. Or somebody up near the top was doing that, from what I know, from what I remember.
Yep.
Wow.
So 18 you brought up averaged 3.14, 81% of the field parred it.
Okay.
And only, I guess, here I can click on it. It might tell us here in a second. Let's see how many twos there were. So virtually no twos there. And then same thing with 17 on the east side. Let's look at how many people parred that one. 79% of people parred it, only 4% birdies. So those two holes need to go. They need to change. Genius needs to be a par 3. I think it's fine to be a really hard par 3, an elite par 3 with the elite field that comes there. 8 West needs to be reworked, and 11 West I'm actually okay with. That's just a good technical shot, and it's interesting, and there's some risk reward there. But those other holes that we've mentioned, Genius can be a par 3. 8 West needs to change altogether. 17 East and 18 West. Those holes are not producing any meaningful results for the tournament.
Yeah.
Not good holes anymore.
It is interesting how you get to a certain point where it almost stops being a difficult par 3, and it becomes like an easy par 3, but it's just a 3. Like, it's not one that you just birdie. Everybody just gets a 3 on it, and it ends up just being really boring. Where if it would be actually more exciting to either have a shorter, more attackable par 3, you know what I mean, or yeah, just rework it entirely. And that hole as well, the little island is just, it's kind of goofy. It has like almost like a safari kind of feel to it. Like, it feels like a temp hole. It seems silly.
Yeah, well, I guess it is a temp hole technically.
Yeah, right. And it feels like it. It feels like they're just like, we'll go from here to, we'll throw one basket over here, and then, just kind of tie it together. It's interesting.
Yeah. And I know it kind of sounds like sacrilege, but, as long as we're entertaining the idea of reworking the way the fling is set up, I would be okay with a total course redesign, put together an 18-hole super course and do 4 rounds on that of just the 18 best holes. I think that would be fun.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody bring that up before. That's an interesting idea. What are the ones you would definitely take out of the main property? Because that's the other thing, is like one of the few things I don't really like about the event is that we're seeing them play holes that you don't always get to play based on different things. Like, for example, the Genius hole is not in because so many different shots end up going over the road, and it just creates a danger with cars coming in and out of there, to have people playing that, all year round.
Right.
But what are the ones that 100% are definitely on your 18 at Milo?
Yeah, so if I'm going purely, with no consideration to anything other than how much I like the hole and have you get the enjoyment factor.
Okay.
Genius is there. I'm going to start on that side of the course and kind of work my way across.
Okay.
Genius is there. Hole 10 is there. Hole 11 is there. I could leave hole 12. I could leave hole 13, and then I would go over to the Monster next. I'd play the Monster. I'd play the Mound hole. I like 16 as the par 4 coming back.
16 is a great. I like that hole a lot. I think that's a really fun shot, and it's an interesting design. I really like that shot.
That's one of the best 2-shot par 4s on the property and in the game, because you get to throw a creative tee shot, typically a backhand, and then the second shot you can be creative. It's typically a forehand, and then the green is interesting. So I think that's a good hole.
Definitely.
17, 18, the spiral, right, 1 through 5, I could leave. I like hole 3. If you had to keep a woods hole, I think that's a better woods hole.
That's the one with the big tree that you kind of throw the flex forehand around the backside of the tree. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's just an interesting hole.
A beautiful little hole as well. It's a pretty shot.
Hole 6, I would change. I like that tee shot, but I would change the hole. Hole 7, I like, but I would change. If I was reworking the property, I'd actually go from 2's tee pad to 7's basket up the hill. I think that would be interesting.
Okay.
Hole 8 is dumb. Get rid of that hole also, which I birdied. I like. It's a fun hole to park with the roller, but it's not on the Dream 18.
The one that you basically have to throw a roller to get any kind of a look at it.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That one also feels like kind of a temp hole.
Yeah. Exactly. On the other side, I don't know how I feel about hole 1. I don't think I like it. Hole 1 west. It's the kind of low ceiling out the chute, and then you cross the road.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking of the normal other side hole 1. Okay, great. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
I hear you on that one. That one's a little. It's. I mean, it's challenging. And it requires multiple shots to get a putt, which is nice for a pro par 4. But yeah, I hear you on that one. It's a little questionable.
It's a little grown in now. In previous years, it's been better. And after the tee pad got moved up, I think it just changed the hole enough to where I don't like it. I definitely would keep hole 2, of course. 3 and 4 could go. 5 could go. I would keep Philo. I'd keep that hole. I liked playing the landing strip hole, but I don't think that should be in a tournament. I don't think 8 should be in a tournament. 9 I like. 10 I would change a little bit, but I like that green and I like that shot. 11 I would take out just because that hole kills me, so I wouldn't want to play that in my layout. And then the next hole 12 coming back, is actually one of my favorite holes of all disc golf. It's just the perfect distance to where you throw a perfect 440-foot shot. You're going to get rewarded, and so that's one of the best feelings in disc golf. Yeah. Hole 13 I like as the par 4. Dream hole I like. And then the rest of the course I don't like. So wow. I think there's 18 in what I just said, and if not, I would stretch a couple of them out and rework it and come up with 18 that fit together. But
yeah, that's an interesting idea. I never really thought about it that way. That's an interesting idea for sure. I would say I would definitely still keep the little 150-foot backhand putter hole. I like that shot, and I also personally think it's an interesting thing to have to all of a sudden check up and throw a standstill putter and still execute that shot. I like that. I don't think there's any problem with having a small little hole
on the west course.
Yeah, the one that's up into the woods, right before it finishes right behind the tee for the 2 that go off the cliff, the dream hole and the other one, the little short one up there. Because you can also still get into danger up there too. If you kick left, you can take a 4 on that one easy. Because there's a big cliff there.
I've only birdied it. My last time playing was the first time I birdied it in about 14 attempts.
Wow, yeah, that's a tricky little shot. It's an ace run if you hit it perfect, but you can definitely get into trouble.
Yeah, I don't like that hole.
You don't like it? That's fair.
No, I think the tee pad's actually in the wrong spot. I think it's just angled a little bit wrong. Everybody stands on the tippy top left corner of the tee pad and then throws a little flex backhand. I think it's just, if you adjust it a little bit, it becomes the hole I think it's meant to be. So
yeah. All right. Before we go too far geeking out on Milo, especially because a lot of people don't know the property, won't understand a lot of this, but do you know the story of the other shorty, the little turnover on the other side of the course that has the tee pad completely pointed in the wrong direction? Do you know what the story is with that?
Oh yeah, you don't know about that?
No. Why is it like that?
That's so interesting. Okay, so probably about a dozen years now at this point, the hole originally was a big high putter turnover. If you look at where the tee pad's pointing and you go around the tree that everybody throws to the right side of where the fairway is now, it was a big high turnover, and it was only about 190 feet, but you had to throw like a 300-foot high putter shot to get it to bend and float back towards the green.
Oh, okay.
That whole right side was completely just woods. You couldn't even see the basket. It was like this thick forest, and then you threw this big turnover. Well, one of the trees fell over and basically cleared out that fairway and completely negated the big turnover putter shot. So nature had other plans and completely reshaped that hole, and then the Stumptown crew went in, cleaned it up, and made it the hole it is today. But it used to be a completely different shot.
Oh wow, okay, interesting. Yeah, that's definitely before my time. I think the whole time I've played Milo, it's been like that. How it is now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I never knew that one. I always get there and I'm like, that's another one where that's one thing I will say about Milo. Me and Andy were talking about this the other day, is that if you're a newbie and you never played there and you get there, it could definitely be tricky to figure out where to go. Like, it's not the most navigable course in town. There's a lot of other courses in town that are much more obvious how to navigate and go through in the correct order. You know, Milo can definitely be tricky as to where to go next.
Yeah, definitely.
And that one is another one where you get to it and you're like, oh, a basket's over there. You're pointing in the wrong direction. It's just kind of confusing. I think Milo is absolutely in need of new tee pads. I think the baskets was a great addition. I personally didn't like that they got away from doing. I would have liked it better if they kept them all red. For whatever reason, I like that better than the yellow bands. But I understand why they did that. It's totally fine. But I think tee pads are the next thing that needs to come in.
Yep, they redid some of the real bad tee pads, which was excellent for this tournament. The baskets are, man, just get new baskets. I think I'm ready for. I mean, this course and this tournament is large enough to where I think you could have fully sponsored courses. So instead of East-West, it's like Discraft Innova, and Discraft chips in 18 brand new baskets and Innova chips in 18 brand new baskets, and that's the layout, you know. So okay. I think that this course is big enough and there's enough prestige where I don't think that would even be a problem if you were to write an email to those companies right now and just say, hey, which side do you want? You know,
it's always nice to see fresh baskets show up at any of the courses in town. I remember when the mock X's went in at Pier. That was pretty awesome. Those are already starting to get a little beat up now, but it's been quite a while, I guess. That was for the World, so they were brand new then, so that was pretty interesting. All right. Well, we are at over an hour now. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and as much, you know, critique and criticism as we've been giving the Fling and Milo, it's by far one of the best things to happen to disc golf and one of the best places to ever go play, and it is one of the best courses in the world. So hope the audience doesn't misconstrue any of our thoughts and musings about the property and the event itself. Top notch all around. Just hoping to continue to make progress and keep it one of the best events of all time.
Yeah, exactly. It's only because we care about the event that you could even speculate about what could be better and stuff, but it's always going to remain one of the most highly sought after events of the year. I mean, I can't even count how many times a professional player is asked, what's your favorite event? What's your favorite course? Milo and Beaver State Fling are mentioned time and time and time again. I mean,
Yep.
You know, I believe Eagle considers Milo to be his favorite course in the United States, and I'm sure many other players would agree. It's a fantastic property, and it's a great event for sure. And I always have a great time going out there because I don't have to worry about playing those holes. I just get to watch and have fun. Yep. Well, thank you so much, Dion. I appreciate your perspective for sure. I will let you go, and we'll have to check in with you again soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Baird.
All right, cheers, man. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Huge thank you once again to Dion for being on the show and giving us his perspective on these two great events. I really hope that the Portland Swing becomes a thing that we see every year. I know the pros love being in town. We love having the pros in town. If you are a professional disc golfer and you hear this, I would like you to know that you are welcome to stay in Portland for the rest of the year if you wish. There is no rule against that. In fact, many people move here on a daily basis. So if you want to stick around and I can run into you out there on the course and around town more often, that is just fine. In fact, I have plenty of filming opportunities for anybody that wants to help me out with that. Anyway, just goofing around. But hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate all your support. I will check you guys very soon. Cheers.